This is Getting Past Subtitles. My name is Sean Peel.
And I'm DK Lee.
And welcome to the last week of our Jet Li series.
Yeah, and we're going back in time.
Again.
Yeah.
We're actually going further back in time.
This is the furthest back.
Yeah, this is the furthest back. 94 was the other one, and then this came out in
92, I think.
91.
Oh, 91.
Yeah. And so he was a little bit even younger. He was like, well, what did I say? I think I said
30 something.
he was like 31 or 32. And so he was like 27, 28 here. I feel like it's weird though, because I feel like he looks older in this role than he did playing Fist of Legend.
Because he was playing a student.
Yeah. He was like very, I mean, he's clean shaven here, but he's like, I don't know, he's just like more tidy. Like he's got the haircut.
Yeah.
He seems more younger. But here he is playing someone of like middle age.
Yeah.
Even though he's the youngest he's been. And I mean, it works out, obviously, if I think that way. So
yeah.
But we're wrapping up the series. We're talking about Once Upon a Time in China, the first movie. And as I said, it came out in 91. This one was directed by Hark Tsui. This is also based off of a real life character of the same name character, Wong Fei-Hung, who was
he's a lot more like a folklore kind of hero kind of character though.
Yeah.
Even more so than all the other ones. There is a through line in all of his movies and kind of the characters that he plays.
Yeah. It's like, I'm guessing it's just like street name kind of person, you know? Like all that badass Fei Hung, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so he just kind of made a name as like a martial artist, like in Foshan, where he's from. The movie's also set in Foshan. There's like a lot of like just umbrella cues taken. Like I said, like it's in Foshan. It's about this guy and his name. You know, he did, prolific martial arts. He was also a physician. Here he's kind of a physician here too. He obviously
he helps people out.
Yeah,
treats them
when they
get
wounded, shot, and what else? Yeah, and some other things like the Black Army thing, the Black Flag Army. Like he had served under there, and such like that. So a couple of cues, but story related. Like it's all new. Like it's all fictionalized.
Yeah.
So he likes. I mean, I guess that's like what he means by like he's like the wushu.
He's
guy.
not gonna do this anymore. Yeah. And when he was saying that, because he was so like almost typecast right into all of these roles.
Right.
I'm sure he wanted to do it as well, but it's there comes a point when this is all that you do, or like this is like I said, he's really known for these kinds of like very traditional, very like nationalistic movies.
Yeah.
About China and like Wong. The character Wong is his arguably like the most iconic of his characters that he has done, because he's done it for like so long, and that even for me, when I like thought about Jet Li, like this was a character that I thought about.
Yeah.
Mainly because I was young and that's the first impression that I had. Like this movie was basically the first impression that I had of Jet Li.
Gotcha.
And so that kind of shaped, what I thought about him and this character.
Right.
But I think you can also attest to this, but like as an actor, I think that he has grown a lot. Seeing, from all the movies that we've watched and going back to this movie, like you can definitely tell that he's opened up his, the range of like what he, I mean, it's still kind of, I think to be fair, the movies that we watched in this series doesn't really help
not at
my
all.
Case. But if you do watch his other movies, I think that you can kind of see that, he has opened up to other things as well. It's just that the ones that we've watched is very like iconic, like Jet Li, like
we watch
wushu
typecast
movies. But but there's still a lot of growth, I think, from the movies that we've watched if you look at them in a chronological order.
Yeah, they've like definitely more I mean, just like the projects that he picks wise, they've like are broader and kind of expanded versus like chronologically.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely are different from one another. But yeah, I mean, like I have a really good idea of, like you said, kind of why he's kind of typecasted in this role, and that he's obviously there's a through line, like he's always playing these like folklore is very like prominent martial artist
Savior
people.
of the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Characters.
Yeah, like that's kind of his thing, and like for a long time, and like after the fact, just kind of just doing action, post, Fearless, right? Yeah, post Fearless.
Yeah.
Funny enough, though, I think like I feel like we went back to Fearless watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I had to draw comparisons between like the series,
Yeah.
this movie probably has the most similar ties to Fearless in a way. So it's kind of funny how that sort of played off in itself. Like this like his first like kind of like breakout, like sort of like Jet Li-ish kind of film versus.
I would say so, but that might just be because I
It's your
saw
first.
it. Yeah.
For Lee,
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
a breakout role.
But yeah, I mean, this was like when this came out, it was a big hit.
Yeah.
Not even just in China, but like even in Korea, it was like pretty big too. So
Gotcha. Yeah, it was funny. So like, when I was watching it, and I was kind of confused with the dubbing of it because like a lot of it was off sync.
You watched it dubbed,
Not dubbed,
subbed.
subbed.
Yeah.
But even like subbed, it was dubbed over in,
yeah,
Cantonese.
yeah.
So I was like really confused.
I
as
think
to,
even
like,
the English lines were dubbed for Bucky, the Bucktooth.
oh my
soldier.
god, all the English parts
Yeah.
were like, oh my. That's just like, come on.
But that's part of the charm.
Yeah, that's
The campy charm of these kinds of movies.
that's the magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that kind of threw me off. I was like, is like it's just out of sync or is it different? But no, it was actually like dubbed over in Cantonese because Jet Li doesn't speak. He speaks Mandarin, and he spoke Mandarin throughout like the entire filming. So they like changed it up after the fact. So that was an interesting note. But yeah, this is the first. There's like 5 of these films, right?
There's a lot.
It's a lot,
And I think there's even more films with not Jet Li.
really.
Yeah. So like a new actor
Yeah.
kind of took over the reins.
The forever long series.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 movies is a lot. Yeah, and like Tsui Hark did like 4 of them, I think. Yeah, I think the only one I read like the 4th one he didn't do, and that Biao Young ended up doing that one. He plays Foon in this one. Yeah. What was interesting that I read is that originally Jet Li wasn't the ideal pick. It was actually supposed to be the trio Jackie Chan, Byung, and Samo, but they couldn't get them all into it, and so Jet Li took it. And the only one that came onto the project was Biao. And then like after I read that, after watching the movie, I was like, actually, it just makes so much sense because I'm watching all these like characters and like archetypes, and like they were clearly like made for those guys, 100%. Like Porky, like obviously like Biao Fung, like yeah, okay, and like I mean Jet Li fit into his role really nicely, but like also like Jackie could have definitely started and something like that. Maybe, what do you think? Do you think it would have been better though with them? I think there would have been a better charm to the movie.
I think. I mean, looking back at it now, like watching it again, I think that there might have been better cohesion within the movie had they been in it. But I don't think that it would necessarily be like better per se.
Like wildly.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be wildly better just because I just think the script isn't the best.
It's the 80s.
To be honest.
It's the 80s.
To be honest, it's not like the most tight script ever.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, whoever came on, unless they really had an impact in like
The story.
changing kind of like how the story worked or like how the sequences kind of played out.
Yeah.
No chance. I don't think that it would have made that much of a difference in terms of that.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I do think like just the charm of those 3 guys would have definitely added a little bit of extra spice to it.
Kind of
But
covered up the blemishes.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, this is Jackie Chan.
Right. Because I don't watch Meal on Wheels and let go. That story was amazing. You know what I mean? So that's like my take on it, but it is kind of funny seeing that was the original case for it. But yeah, so this was my first time watching it. I'll be honest, it's definitely the weakest link of the series. We kind of talked about it before. I was like, this one was hard for me to get into. It's also pretty long.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that it's like I wasn't really engaged the entire time watching it. And like about halfway through, I mean, like just the story was kind of convoluted. Like I didn't know why certain things were happening. Like by the time I hit the halfway mark, I was like, okay, like it's Saho versus like Fei-Hung's militia, you know, or like in his school. I was like, I don't know how they became enemies. Like I'm just like at this point, I'm just watching them fight it out, but I have no idea.
And then mostly it was like Feng, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like stumbled them into this like
he was just being an idiot the whole time.
Yeah.
And
stumbled them into this war between the two groups, and you're kind of like, why
and he doesn't side with anybody.
Yeah,
like,
he doesn't. He keeps on like flip flopping back and forth.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I mean, we can talk about that more, like the plot and the story later.
But like,
yeah, continue on.
But yeah, that was like just my like impression watching in. So, you know, I mean, after a while, it was like I kind of stopped, you know, just paying attention or judging it by the plot of that, because I was like, this is a lost cause, you know, and just kind of like going on for the ride. And but the action was cool. Like, you know, obviously, like, it's still like a fun kind of like blockbuster in that sense. But everything else is like not really working out too much for it. So yeah, I mean, story wise, convoluted. But I do like, I mean, the pluses that I liked were, like I said, are kind of like the archetypes of it. Like you have sort of like the fat kung fu guy who's porky, right? Like you still have all these archetypes of characters, and like the hero, and sort of like Foon is kind of the goofball, but he's probably the weakest link.
He's kind of like the guy who is like trying to learn from the master or whatever, but like he like kind of fails, and like he betrays them, and like, you know, that kind of trope.
He just does so much.
Yeah.
I think, it's kind of like maybe biting off more than you can chew with Foon's character.
And then there's also like the bucktooth
guy, who's kind of sort of the comedy character. And then like all those things are kind of fine, and there's some funny scenes with it. But what's funny is like as I was doing this, like I'm going through the notes, and like I'm doing the I'll do the quick take this week, but I didn't know about the story. So when I realized I had to do the quick take, I was like, wait, I have to understand the actual structure of the story now.
This one's gonna be rough.
I was like, I need to do the synopsis. Like, wait, what actually happened? I don't even know. So I guess like probably the most I got out of it was like the characters and the fight sequences at best. But how did this age for you?
Yeah, it didn't age too well. Like I watched it when I was like young. Like my brother was watching it, and so I was just there and I was looking at it. And so I think the impression of the action sequences had a very big impression on me. Just because like you're seeing this dude like fly around, and like you know, he has his like bow staff, and he's like beating people with it, and like he's like jumping around, and he's dodging bullets, and
all these things,
all the things that a young, you know, impressionable kid would love, right? And so
checks all the boxes. Then
it does. It checks all of the boxes. And I think the opening sequence, right, when they're on the beach and they're all training together, like I think that was a very iconic like thing that was very impressionable on me as well. And the music too, it's just like when I was that young, it was very catchy. And so like all of that coming together, like to be honest, I never like loved the movie, but I just had like a good like memory of it. Yeah, like just like, oh yeah, I remember that. It was a pretty like, you know, like fun movie to watch, like fun, like good action, and like to be fair, like the action isn't bad. It's pretty good. I wouldn't say to be like precise, I think it is the worst out of all the movies, but
Okay.
it was still good.
Yeah.
For me, I think it was just, you know, a little less refined than like Fist of Legend and like
Right.
Hero. Well, Hero, to be honest, I don't really like Hero's like action too much
It's not
too,
really like
it's
on a different.
yeah, I don't like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
like wire action that much, but
Sure.
it's just like preference, I guess, right? For that, it's not like a like it's just like not good, right? It's just more of a preference thing.
Sure.
But I think that this one definitely watching it again, I think it's like a lot less polished than like let's say Fist of Legend
Right.
or something like that. So that is one thing, but yeah, it's long.
It's long.
It's long too. Like I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was this long when I was younger because I don't care about it. I was just like, oh, he's fine.
Action. Yeah, it's cool.
But it is pretty long and the story's not that great.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it kind of like went downhill for me as well, because it's like watching all of his other movies that we watch in the series, like I feel like the story was pretty like pivotal in like
Each
the
one.
enjoyability of the movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of the action kind of supported the story as well. Whereas I feel like in this movie, a lot of the story is being, supported by, the action is, the story is just there for the action is what I'm trying to say,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like a lot of the moments that happen is like kind of like, okay, why is this happening? Or like, what's the point of this? And then like a lot of this, the action is like going on to kind of bring that spectacle in.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like in Fist of Legend and Hero, even in Fearless, a lot of the story was being driven by the action, right? Like even within the action, there was a lot of story, like things going on that
Right.
kind of you can tell like what's going on with the two characters, and like the action really informed the story. Whereas I feel like in this movie, you don't really get that too much. It's a lot more for the play, for the fun of it, right? Like to show like, oh, this is cool, like we can do this and like all of that. So
Yeah, it's like the priorities are just not straight. Like the priorities are just like, or you're basically just flipped.
right,
in this
in my
movie,
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We all know what we think about your opinion. Like,
in my opinion.
action first, story,
No,
story
what?
backseat, story
Was
backseat.
that what I was saying this whole time?
Isn't that what I just said?
Anyways, yeah.
No, but I 100% agree. Yeah, it definitely, like I said, just kind of flipped the script. Like the story definitely wasn't there, and like that was a great point. Like, and everything, like all the other three movies, and I mean, just kind of, I think we talked about this too last week, which is in Jet Li's case, I feel like he takes great care and like maybe even pride in the stories and like the script, and then everything just kind of seems to support it. But this movie doesn't share that same connection to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely the weakest link, but it's just funny like watching this and like everything else, and like I don't know, it feels like also that he has maybe like less of a hand in this movie versus I feel like he definitely had a bigger hand in the other movies, so like in that sense too, probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Where he just has kind of less kind of creative authority over the.
It's just funny because we're watching it like backwards, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we were watching like the oldest one and then kind of like going back
the first
in
one.
time, and so like having that like reverse perspective on this thing is kind of interesting to like kind of think about. Oh, like a lot of his younger works, or older works, I should say, right, has less of that like that story built in, whereas like a lot of his newer ones kind of focused on that a lot more.
Right. You live and you learn, right?
Exactly. Like it's cool to see the growth of that, right?
Yeah. So it's funny, like, but even I guess even for like Fist of Legend, right? There isn't. I would say there still isn't like a huge, like I said, that kind of creative hand from him. I feel like versus the latter two that we saw, but it still had like I definitely feel it still has great direction. Like it's probably the best story of everything that we saw. But like that's kind of like a testament to like the director. I feel like more than sort of himself. But
But it's also like picking the part, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah, like-
choosing to do a certain part. So
For what he could do, he
being
did
able to
really great.
discern, and choosing
Mm.
different parts. But also like Fist of Legend was based off Fist of Fury, and
Yeah.
it's already a story that was there.
Was that yeah?
So it's not like hard to choose, or like hard
It's the
to like
retelling.
figure out what the story would be.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
There was already like a template for it.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to focus on like a different aspect versus like the plot kind of story aspect of it. So like I said, it's my week for the quick take. I wrote this down. Let's see how good I do. Yeesh. So we have, like I said, Wong Fei-Hung, who's the lead. He returns to China after he returns to China as the leader of a school and like a trained militia that was gifted to him by the leader of the Black Flag Army. The general like ends up going to fight in like Vietnam or whatever. So the story is set in like 19th century Foshan, when foreign occupancy is running pretty heavy with Western influence, including the Americans, British, and the French. One of Fei Hung's Aunt Yi, we'll call her. Yeah, I feel like better calling her Aunt Yi than the 13th aunt. It's such a weird like thing, but she's called 13th aunt like all the movie. But yeah, she comes back from America, and she's like completely westernized, basically. So Hung is tasked with protecting her and housing her since she's staying in China. Meanwhile, this guy named Fun, who is a local worker, wants to join his school and be taught under Hung. But after like this uncanny experience with Pak Tu So, he quits before even meeting Fei Hung, and Fun ends up working for a theater, and gets threatened by like this local gang from Saho, and they call him out because they know that he knows kung fu and that like you're trying to challenge us or whatever. So it's like one versus an entire gang essentially, and so he seeks like help from this guy named Porky and his crew, and they're actually disciples of Fei Hung's school. So all of this leads into one big fight between Hung's militia versus Saho, and the fight gets roped into like with the local authorities as well as like the foreign entities that are there. Like there's this big dinner scene that happens, but basically Hung is criminalized for these actions, and he tries to apprehend the gang leader of Saho, but ultimately his plan kind of backfires on him. So the Saho gang tries to get revenge by burning his school, and just when like Fei Hung thinks that he can catch the gang leader, they basically seek asylum with the Americans, and then they like kind of like cut a deal, and they basically try to assassinate Hung and everybody else, and this happens like on a day in like a theater performance essentially.
Yeah.
So Fun, who's still pretty much clueless about like the whole politics of everything that's going on, ends up siding with like a third party entirely, which is this guy named Iron Robe Yim. He's like this homeless but really powerful martial artist, and he basically seeks to climb the social ranks, and he thinks that he can do that by defeating Fei Hung, who's like the top martial artist of the town. But this ends up causing more trouble for him in the school after he challenges him, and it even ends up getting Fei Hung thrown into jail. So Fun ends up following Iron Robium, who ends up siding with the Saho gang, and they basically like all combine forces with the Americans to like rule Foshan, essentially. And the gang ends up kidnapping Aunt Yi, as they were trying to escape from like the authorities and such. And so Buk Tu So escapes when she's captured and relays the information to Fei Hung in jail. And basically like some of the police officers are like sided with Fei Hung, and so they let him out free from jail and like basically do this rescue operation. And like that leads to like, you know, the final fight and like Hung versus Iron Robe Yim, and basically the movie ends with all the bad guys dying.
Yeah.
Like literally. And that's really just the end of the movie.
Yep.
If that sounded convoluted, well, it was. Well, it was.
We'll talk about it more, just how convoluted it was, but yeah.
Yeah, like it's funny because I was like doing these notes, right, and I'm thinking about like I'm like writing the synopsis, or I'm just thinking about like Jet Li's character in general, and like like the series is for Jet Li, and so I'm thinking of like Jet Li's character in this movie, and like how he's still playing a very like one note character, which is like a through line I think for every movie that we've watched. He's a very like straight hero. Yeah. There isn't too much depth with him as a character. But I was saying that I was like, oh, but he's not really like 100% the star of the show in this movie, because there's so many other characters, particularly with like Fun, who kind of carries the plot in a lot of ways. But then when I was like rewatching it, I kind of reneged that opinion, because I was like, actually, Fei-Hung has like the majority to all the screen time. But I think it's just like the way that the plot like weaves, that it takes attention away from him.
There's a lot of points in the movie where like Wong seems like he's not aware of certain things,
right?
And like it just kind of hits him, right? And I think that's why it feels like he doesn't feel like he's like not included too much in the plot,
because it's like clearly he's supposed to, like, he's a protagonist, and like he's supposed to be the centerpiece, but it doesn't always feel like that.
There are a lot of moments where it seems like he's just reacting to whatever's happening rather than him proactively like doing certain things.
Right.
I mean, there's like in the beginning, he kind of is the one who decides to go to the embassy and like the dinner thing and all of that, and like he tells like, and then when the fight breaks out, he's like, "Oh, stop!" and like we have that like action scene and stuff like that.
Right.
But apart from that, like most of the time he's reacting, right? Like like his dojo, his place gets burned down. He reacts to that. He gets like the aunt gets captured. He is reacting to that. Like it's all about like things happening to him, and he's just kind of like trying to figure out how to like
put out the fires.
Literally. So it kind of makes the character feel not that like active. It just kind of feels like he's just on the defensive the whole time. And I think that might, until the end, I guess, when he like I mean, that is a reaction, right? He's trying to save his girl. The girl. So but like at that point, at least he's like in fully invested in what he's trying to do in like fighting the iron rope dude and all of that. So I think that's why, like you said, the reason why it kind of feels like he's kind of in the backseat of the plot, even though he's like there the whole time, right? Because like a lot of times, like his disciples are doing stuff, right? Like, they're the ones who are like, driving the force. We gotta fight the Saho disciples, and like we gotta beat them out of the town and like drive them out, and all of that's happening. And then like there's Fung, who's like, oh, like I want to become like like a kung fu master, and he's the one that's like following the iron rope dude and like trying to get him to like teach him and all of that stuff. And that's like kind of a big plot. The weird part about this movie, right, is the way that they incorporated the iron rope yen guy into the Saho like Saho gang plot. Right, that's like, that was so weird for me when I was watching it, because it's like it felt like two completely different like plot points, right, in the beginning, where he's literally just some random dude who's like
a street performer,
street performing and kind of like showing off his like martial arts skills so that he can get some food to eat,
right?
And then later on, like he kind of becomes a big bad. Like you can kind of foretell that he will be, but the way that came through with the Saho gang and like how they decided to do that and all of that kind of felt very like not satisfying. Like he just like, and even his motives felt very like weak. And
also a little convoluted too, because like when you first see him, like one, he's just kind of like a street performer, right? So it's kind of like a throwaway thing. And then when you return back to him and he's fighting once you like, I'm like, who he is, like he's fighting that other guy with the sword,
the master dude,
other master dude, the sword master guy. And then he defeats him. I don't know. Like, I mean, my first impression was like, he's a little like heroized in a way. Like he's kind of brought in a brighter light, and like he's kind of have like we talked about kind of like the save the cat thing, right? Like he's this homeless guy, and he's like Funa's like, oh, but you're like super strong. Let me help you feed you because you're homeless. Let's be homeless together. Like he has a clear kind of goal, but then like once his goal is revealed, like, oh, I'm just trying to climb the social ladder. Like I just want to be the best and like not be poor anymore. But, like the way that he goes about it is like a little immoral, right? As he sides with Saho. Like I don't know, it just kind of like changed sides a bit. Like, am I supposed to look at this guy in a good light, or is he actually kind of a bad guy?
Yeah, it's more like the direction of like what that character is, or like in comparison, like he's supposed to be the foil to Wong, right?
Right.
He's supposed to be the opposite of Wong, but I feel like they don't really like do enough with him from the beginning to kind of prop him up to be this big bad at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of feels like, okay, now we need a big bad, so let's bring him back in, right? It kind of feels like that, which is, I don't think, the best way to go about it. Because it feels like there's a lot of like, it feels like there's a lot of empty, like just emptiness in the beginning to the mid part of it,
right,
of his character, so that we can kind of have this moment between the two characters and him representing one thing and Wong representing another.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they do a good enough job of making that clear within the movie.
Yeah, I think like, and if they did, I mean, that would have been a really strong point, I think, for the movie too. Because I mean, like, what's like to have a great villain is to understand your villain and to like have sympathy for him and basically siding with the villain in a certain way. Like if you understand like his ideology, like you have to see him as not as a bad guy, but like really understand him and like why he's doing it, even though it's like maybe for the wrong reasons. You kind of understand. And I think like ideologically wise, like they kind of had that for him, right? But like you said, he's nowhere in the story up until like the third act that it doesn't really matter anymore because he's just kind of separate. But if he like carried through as the villain for the movie, I think that it would have really strengthened it a lot more,
and it would have made the story a lot more like cohesive too.
Right.
I feel like it's like him as a character. Like if he was the one who is, let's say for example, like, oh, I'm going to use whatever is at my disposal to try to get what I want.
Right.
And if he really was that character and like they really like push that, and like they kind of tried to do that at the end when there's that scene with the money and like Feng like throws the money and then he's like, oh, pick the money up, right? And then Feng kind of like refuses, and then like he starts like picking up the money from the ground and stuff like that. So you kind of see like what his like thoughts are on like his like the importance of like getting what he wants and the importance of money and like how and like the corruption behind it and all of that. You kind of get that there, but like it's at that point like you're not real. That's not really what you're like really invested in, right? Like you're kind of thinking about all of the like the aunt like being captured and all that stuff. That like that's really not like in the forefront of like the dichotomy between like Wong and him. And so it kind of like just gets buried behind all the other like crazy stuff. That's literally the moment when like the aunt is about to get raped and stuff. So like that's a lot more attention you're going there, and like all this kind of like side thing is just kind of,
who cares about that guy,
right? Because you're worried about the aunt like getting screwed over, and like that's all happening. And so like the division of the person's attention as you're watching the movie is like kind of split between these two things, and I don't think it was like the best way to go about it.
It was more of a distraction than like maybe what we wanted to see in the moment. Like, I mean, that's a great point. Like, I'm more concerned about what's happening to Aunt Yi versus this, like, I don't know, meta moral convolutedness with Fun and Iron Robe Yim, Because, like I said, I mean, all that happens at the same time, and they capture this girl, whatever. And, like, Fun is like, but Aunt Yi and the other master. And it's like, I'm more concerned about Aunt Yi's well-being than like this other bad guy, or even just Fun, because like Fun is like forefronted in that scene, per se.
Yeah.
So it's just like, if it's just focused on like, she the love interest gets captured and like you got to go save her. Like, if you just went into that more focusedly, it would have just been a lot more streamlined.
And there's a lot of like issues with like clear cut arcs of characters, like character arcs within the movie, where like, for example, like Wong barely has a character arc, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because he's kind of one note, like you said, like he's just one note the whole time, and so the character doesn't really change from the beginning to the end. He's always the
same,
the upright moral dude. Whereas Feng, I feel like would be the guy who kind of has that moral dilemma and has that character arc. But because he's relegated to this like weird position where like he's constantly like fighting for time between like with Wong, right? Because he's really not the main character, but
he has we
have a lot of like
he has the
him.
Character development part of it.
Yeah, and he has that like kind of like sweetheart, but he's also kind of willing to do whatever he wants. Yeah, and like it's constantly going back and forth there, and like there's never like a clear cut thing until maybe at the end. But even at the end, it's kind of like they kind of throw it out the window by the end. It's just like, okay, whatever, whatever happens.
Yeah,
and so like it's not satisfying in that way either.
It's like what really doesn't work is like, okay, like we have the protagonist who is like the straightforward front hero. Like his whole, like he doesn't go through a character metamorphosis at all. Like he just has his only mission is like set in the very beginning, right? When he's tasked by his former general, like basically like very nationalistic, like, like there's a lot of Western influence, like you got to protect the traditional. Tradition. He gives him his men for the militia. Like it's basically like protecting tradition and like, in that sense,
preserving the way of life.
Exactly. Yeah. And he definitely preaches that throughout the movie as well. And like, I think that's great because also like with Aunt Yi, like those are very clashing representations. Yeah. Like, so that works great. But like his job is solely to like keep that. And so he doesn't go through any like sort of internal thing. And that's like why we have Fun, who like is like kind of carries that weight. But like I say, he kind of gets caught up in like Hung's story and like trying to do his own thing. And like I think it would have made better if the problem is he never actually meets Hung till like the theater assassination scene. And he doesn't even know who Hung is.
Well, he does meet him before. He meets him like when he visits the school.
But he never meets him there.
Yeah, he does.
Does he?
Yeah, for like a split second.
But he doesn't know who he was, though. Like, he's like clueless to like who Hung actually is. Like, he keeps thinking other people are him, right? Okay. Like, he confuses Porky for him. He confuses like Book 2.
Yeah, later on, but he like meet him later on though. After that.
Yeah, he does. But like I said, it takes like forever for him to even like recognize like who he actually is, So like in that sense, he never really kind of formally meets him. So like, he's wanting to be taught like Kung Fu and kind of like he has a clear trajectory. I feel like if he like actually met him earlier,
he never really learns Kung Fu.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he just has some instinct.
That's what, like he never really learns Kung Fu, but like when there is a fight going on, he's able to like
whimsical ways.
Oh, yeah, he's able to do stuff, right?
Not really. He gets beat up every time.
Well, he dodges a few things, like
but ultimately loses.
But it's just like stuff like that too. Like his motivation in the beginning and at the end, like even.
But what I'm saying is like he's like this. I feel like there's a clear like student teacher like dynamic supposed to be with his character. But he never has a proper teacher to like the very end. Like it makes sense if he actually met Hung, like maybe taught under him for a little bit or something, or like there was some kind of like tear between them. Like he was learning under him, or he didn't like his methods or something, and then he went and did his own thing, and then he sided with Iron Robe Yim, who's like also strong, but like the evil part.
Yeah.
And I think it would have made it for a better like, oh, but you were supposed to be the better student kind of thing. You know what I mean? That kind of keeps like the innocence, pure of heart aspect to it. But there really isn't that. So like you said, it just kind of Like
Yeah.
like his whole thing just kind of gets lost in the wind by the end of the day. But it's like, I don't know. It's all convoluted.
It is kind of frustrating, to see
Yeah.
that happen.
But Jet Li never changes.
Oh, look!
Like in every movie he
You don't
does.
have to have a character arc within a character. I
Yeah.
don't think that's necessarily what you have to have within a movie. There can be external, forces,
Right.
and a person who doesn't change and who overcomes that external force. I think that's perfectly fine in a movie. It's just that in this case, like, we have the external thing, but even we have the main character,
Yeah.
and we have him as the immovable mountain, right? He is the moral compass of the movie, and we have the plot, and we have the conflict of this looming advancement of the other countries, other nations
Yeah.
coming over and taking over.
Yeah.
And then we have the other subplot of Feng and him being this guy and him trying to,
Yeah.
turn over a new leaf, let's say. But then because of those two plot points trying to fight for time and attention, none of them get really clear resolution and resolve.
Yeah.
They say the American people, when they side with Saho, are kind of like the bad people.
Yeah.
But even at the end, that's not really what was the big thing that Feng really fought over. Not Feng, Wong
Yeah. Yeah.
fought over. It was more oh, I gotta save Aunt,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's his motivation at the end. It wasn't even oh, I
Defeat
gotta
the Western
Yeah,
powers.
it wasn't even that. And so that story is just kind of just there, right? It's just this overlying looming thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And then at the end it's just oh, we were able to kind of make that happen. And it doesn't really have that satisfactory
Yeah.
climax and then resolution there.
Since we had 10 different climaxes by the end of the movie, right? He's defeating, literally killing off every bad guy. But there's there's a Saho gang leader. There's like at the very end, right?
There's the Iron Robe dude,
Iron Robe,
South
yeah.
gang leader. There's
the American
dude,
there's so many bad guys to beat at the end.
and it just doesn't make for a focused plot point.
Yeah, and a focused ending.
Yeah,
That's why Fist of Legend did it better.
yeah.
For sure.
Because it's the thing about movies is you're distilling all of the, let's say for a villain, you're distilling all the bad things into one character,
Right.
and the main character is being that character, and him beating that character is the symbol for him resolving all of the other issues that happen to be in this villain that is representative of the bigger things, right? Whereas in this movie, it's I gotta beat you, I gotta beat you.
Yeah. They're not proxies, they're actually the bad guy for their own
But
thing.
it's not even bad guys, it's just caricatures of bad guys, right?
Right, yeah.
Just dudes. And it
all dudes that wronged him.
yeah. And so you don't get that sense of the symbolism behind the evil villain and what he stands for versus the symbol of who he is and what he stands for.
Yeah.
What Wong is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was like in Fist of Legend, right? The Japanese general was
Exactly.
that one bad guy. Even though there was a lot of other branching external forces, obviously the the karate school with the other guy who was the leader that killed his master, right? But he was hired and tricked by the Japanese general, and it was Fukunoshi who came in, right? But everything was, like you said, distilled into this one guy. He was the tree trunk of all the wrongdoings,
The root.
the root of it all, and it was just Jet Li's character just had to go and basically track down oh, you're the guy, obviously everything was your fault at the end of the day, right? But here it's, you can't, nothing is distilled to that one thing, It's it's funny that they all side with the United States at the very end, right? It's all with the embassy, but not all of it is tied down to him at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That I don't know, that general or whatever that guy was, like he wasn't the root bad guy for it all. Yeah. He had to punch everybody else along with him. So it's whatever.
Well, what do you think about this movie in terms of its action and?
It's fun. Like it's really good. I think the theater fight scene was probably the best in my opinion. But like again, compared to Fist of Legend, I think like in terms of action and sequences, they're the most similar in being like the most grounded. Like there's probably more wire work stuff here, especially like lots of use of trampolines and stuff like that. So it's a little more flashy and like fantasy-esque, more blockbuster made versus Fist of Legend. But like what made the action really amazing of Fist of Legend, like we were talking about earlier, was like the story. Like the story really supported the fight scenes there, and it just brought out the action sequences like so
within
much more.
within the action too,
and
right?
within the action too.
There is like a clear
storyline.
beginning, middle, and end within the action sequence.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, I feel like it kind of falls apart a lot.
Yeah, like I said,
with
like
regards to that,
a lot of it was just like like the main character is reacting to these scenarios that he's put into, right? Like even my favorite scene is just like the Americans decided to assassinate. Like, well, we'll take care of it. We're gonna cover Hung. Don't worry about it. And then the next scene, and the assassins come in, and he's just like, he's literally there for a show and to like maybe talk some business with the Western, influencers. But then all of a sudden he gets attacked, and now he's got to like save Yi and like protect everybody. Like it's just kind of an instinct thing.
yeah.
And it's like it's just there to be kind of like flashy, like and so it loses like that critical like piece to it. But I mean, like in terms of like action itself, it's cool, like it's fun, it's well choreographed, and it's Jet Li being Jet Li, but like it doesn't have the same charm as the others, right?
The one thing that's like so funny about Chinese like action movies is they're like, they do not give 2 cents about hitting women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're just
Everybody's fair game.
Yeah, everyone is fair game, and they just get hit as hard as any other person, right?
Yeah.
And I just find that so like funny and so like.
Bro, what was it that we were watching? It was Police Story, right?
Which one? For what?
For when we were talking about action movies on an action series, and we were talking about Police Story, and it was like the female character, and she gets like straight like punched in the face and like thrown across.
Thrown across.
Yeah. She gets like that's what I think she got like straight thrown onto a table like hardcore.
That, and even when we watched Fearless, right? that fight scene between the cams, and like they literally get like cut and just like
defend the school, bro.
It don't matter who you are, like. I just find that so funny.
You fight equality for all.
Yeah, exactly. Like you want equality here.
It's life or death in these movies, right? It doesn't matter. Oh man, yeah. I mean, it's a charm, though.
I guess so. Be careful, bro.
Yeah. I what I liked about that scene too is like when they like. It's dark, but like when they shot like everybody in the crowd, it was like oof, and they just like they really went for it.
Yeah.
But like I mean, that kind of like helped reinforce some of the thematics too. But it was like, damn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's nimble in this movie for sure.
Yeah, it's just when I was younger, like I said, I just watched it for the spectacle, and it was great. But as I grow older and kind of, have more mental capacity, right, to understand certain things, it does kind of, it is a point of like, I guess, like, I wish that they could have done more with it, with the action, because like it is good action, but I feel like the way that they could have incorporated the story into it could have been better.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of like, I wish they could have done something more maybe, or like kind of moved it around in certain ways.
Yeah. I mean, like the same thing that we just said earlier. I mean, it even applies to his action where, like I said, even though he is supposed to be the centerpiece of the movie, it feels like he isn't a lot of the times. And I think the same thing goes for the action too, where like that feeling just kind of translate. Like, you know, he is leading a lot of action, and there is kind of like an ensemble element, right? There's like Porky and a lot of the other gang that are like fighting with him, but like versus the series as a whole, like I don't feel like we're really seeing kind of Jet Li show off as much as in the past, you know?
It's more about like for me that the fact that the action starts to lose its intention, or like
Right.
it starts to lose its like meaning within like, you know, like it just starts becoming like just
Fighting.
a mishmash of like stuff going on
Yeah.
rather than something that's like the climactic moment within you know the scene. Like for Fist of Legend, it's very easy to pinpoint like the climax and the action that goes along with that, right? And in your mind, you're like, oh, this is a very like it's very easy to piece those things together.
Yeah.
For example, like the fight with the general, or like, you know, the fight in the dojo, you know, the two clans like clashing, right?
Right.
Stuff like that. It's very easy to kind of, you know, pinpoint and be like, oh, like I'm with the story, right? You can connect those things together. Whereas in this movie, like it's kind of hard, right? Like you're like, what is like the most like iconic in terms of like making sense with the story that the action is like.
Right. Like, what are they trying to accomplish?
Right, like
with this?
maybe the moment when like, but it's like the moment when they fight in the embassy or like the dinner thing, like the carnival, not the carnival, but the theater thing, the theater fighting thing there. Like at the end, maybe like he's fighting Iron, like I don't know, like it's not like as like concrete and like clear cut. Especially in my mind, like of like, oh, like this is that moment when this happened, or like the turning point of this, or like something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't get that feeling in this movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, this is the turning point of the film, where like this is happening, or like this is where this is going, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's true. Because I mean, like you said, like everything feels like reactive. So like it's like almost all the fight scenes kind of intention wise feel the same. I mean, maybe except for like the last scene where he's like initiating to save the girl, but like everything outside.
Yeah, like literally, even when Iron Will goes into the dojo, he's like, "Yo, I want to fight."
Just like random,
bad, yeah,
just like
so random,
out of nowhere.
He just comes in. It's like raining, and it was a pretty cool fight to be honest. But
yeah,
it's still like.
But he's like, dude, clearly I got some shit going on.
Yeah,
here.
like I gotta help my people. Like they're wounded, and he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna fight you now." He just starts fighting.
Breaks his sign, like disrespect.
And so like that's the kind of things that like I feel like this kind of dropped the ball on.
Right. Yeah. I 100% agree. Yeah. I mean, like, I probably maybe the most interesting in that sense would be like the first Iron Girl BM fight when he's fighting the sword guy, where it's like, I don't know, it feels like it's basically a character reveal, but it feels like a little maybe more purposeful, but also like the fight sequence itself has kind of like a structure.
Yeah, I actually like that fight scene a lot. Yeah, because of that.
Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, you dare challenge me, whatever. And he's like, you're gonna go up against my sword, and then like he tries to cut him, and it's like,
nope.
And then he's like, oh shit, like it's iron vest kung fu. What do I do? And then he just dies.
Yeah.
So all that kind of has like it's like an interesting like sub thing there, but and then after that it's like whatever. Yeah. He's like, I'm just gonna fight Hung for no reason now. Yeah, I mean, the movie is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And they got 5 more out of it.
I mean, it was popular.
It feels like I didn't bring this up, but it definitely feels like franchisey in a way. Like, did you get that kind of like epic tale tone to the whole movie though?
Yeah.
Right? Like it feels there's kind of a larger than life aspect to it maybe. Like especially with I guess that's also accompanies the feeling with there's so many elements and like aspects of the movie that kind of maybe support that feeling a little bit. Like I said, there's it's not like one Western influence that's like taking over, right? It's like you got American, British, and the French, and you got like not only Hun School, but he's even like fighting like the Chinese authority, right? Like the police, like he's got all these things going on,
Yeah.
but it feels like it adds to the world a little bit more in that way. So I kind of understood like, oh, this feels a little franchisey, you know? Not that I know where they would go with it, but I mean, I guess it helps that sense. Yeah. But,
Overall, what did
was
you
gonna
think
say.
about this series?
I thought it was good. I mean, really enlightening as far as like I said, I haven't seen any Jet Li films outside of this. But I feel pretty familiar after this series. I mean, this movie is definitely like bottom of the list for them all. But I mean, the other three have been like really good all the way through. And I mean, even for different reasons. It's funny that they're story wise, like the film themselves are diverse between each other, but he kind of plays like the same root character in each one. So it was really interesting to kind of see like a typecast Jet Li, but like in these like almost wildly different like movies, you know, like Hero to like Fearless, and like Hero especially to like Fist of Legend, and like even Fist of Legend to Fearless. Like these are just tonally, like structurally, like visually, like different movies, but he's always kind of playing like this straight sort of like leader character, you know? It just has like a different like maybe like importance in each one, but I don't know. I mean, it's not a bad thing either though.
Yeah, it's
which is funny too. Yeah. So I mean, he does a really good job, you know? He does what he does and he does it well. That's I think that's kind of what my takeaway overall. And like I said, like it's kind of nice to see that you know, in the future, like there's a lot of broad works and stuff that he kind of, especially like after dropping Wushu, like I'm interested to see maybe like more of the recent works that he done. I mean, I saw Mulan, but like whatever.
Oh, Mulan. Right. That's technically a Wushu, no?
Not in the same vein.
He's the king though in that movie. Right?
Yeah. I have to watch it again. Like I saw it once when it came out.
I didn't watch it.
It's been a while. You don't see anything. You know?
Well, I do, but I don't watch that.
Whatever. No. But yeah. What about you? How was it revisiting all these? Like after, like this is like memory lane.
Yeah,
right?
it's like walking down memory lane. I think. You know, a lot of the movies aged a lot better than I thought. This one did not. But you know, even regardless of that, I think I just still enjoyed it for what it was, because like, you know, like you have those moments when there are like certain scenes or like certain like snippets of like scenes that you remember when you were young.
Yeah.
And like you watch it again and you're like, yeah, like, oh, so I remember it being that way.
Yeah.
Like for me, that fight scene when they're on the ladders, and then like when Iron Robe and Wong is fighting on the ladders and stuff, that was like very impression. Like I had an imprint in my mind of that, and like seeing that again, like real time, it was like, whoa. Right, this is what happened, and then like him starts throwing the
you just like relive it like
you're like it's like deja vu in real time,
right?
Know?
Yeah.
So it was fun in that regard, but yeah, it's kind of disappointing that
it's like everything else was not great.
But all the other ones I really did enjoy a lot. This one, you know, for what it was, yeah.
So stacking up against each other, what's the list looking like
for me?
Yeah.
I would say Fist of Legend would be my first.
Okay.
And then Hero, surprisingly actually. And then Fearless, and then probably this one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this one bottom. It's hard, like Hero or Fist of Legend. Like they're great, but like it's hard to like stack them against each other because they're so
different.
Yeah. Like they're not even in the same playing field.
I just go by like my what I favor in terms of like aesthetic and in terms of like
just what you jive
style
with
and
personally.
Yeah.
Damn, I really don't know. Between those two,
we'll just put them all on the same.
They're like you share the throne together. But yeah, Fearless third, and then this one fourth.
What's third? Oh, Fearless.
Fearless, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just like that's a whole conversation. It's just like, I mean, like visually, obviously hero, but like story wise, Fist of Legend takes the cake.
Yeah,
you know?
but it's funny because I actually think that Fearless had the most character like development and like arc in all the movies.
Yes,
Because like
because it was very clear. Like,
in the beginning, you see him and like him kind of like turning over the new leaf and all that.
100% true.
And you really can see his like
His change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that just supports like my initial like kind of what I was saying before, but they're all great for different reasons. So yeah, pretty cool. And just see who we talk about next.
Yeah,
as far as martial arts, we'll take a break from it though. I feel like we talked about a lot of martial arts
from Shaolin soccer to here.
Yeah, and it felt like not like 4 but like 6 weeks of martial arts films.
Yeah, very enjoyable. Always love talking about martial arts and martial arts films.
Same.
Would love to do more in the future.
We still have like Jackie Chan. We still have Bruce Lee. We still have
so many different things. Even things that are not explicitly martial arts, but even just like action films,
right?
Or like we already did an action film series, but it's always fun for me to see and like how they choreograph things and stuff like that. We didn't really get really into detail with that stuff, but next time it'd be pretty cool to talk about that too, like what makes a good choreography work and stuff like that too.
Yeah, they're definitely like, I mean, Jackie Chan would be a great person to talk about that with, right? Because like that's more of like a forefront in his movies versus like, and here Jet Li, it's more of like story kind of we talked about. So kind of like who caters to what sort of thing, right?
But even just like other action movies, not even like specifically,
not even that too.
Certain people or characters.
Well, we could talk about the Company Man again. It's great action.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the action in the movie wasn't bad. It was just how the story kind of just...
The man is Superman.
It's not even that the story didn't make sense. It's just the unbelievability of what was going on. That was what I didn't like.
It was just like...
Why do we always go back to Company Man when we talk about action?
It's our highest viewed episode. What are you talking about?
Oh my goodness.
It's got a golden name on its plaque. But yeah, so that'll be the Jet Li series. And we're taking a huge shift. We were taking a very, very wide left shift. We kind of
wanted to take a hard, sharp turn just so we can kind of breathe some new air.
Yeah.
Some new lovely spring fresh air,
That's I would say that's a good analogy. But it could spin another way too. It doesn't always have to be.
That's true.
Happy goodness in this particular drama, especially the one we're doing, because it's not rom-com, but it is rom.
Yeah, it's just romance films, romance movies.
Yes.
And
but like,
do you watch a lot of romance?
I want to say yes, but I think lately no. They're usually actually, I think, maybe one of the genres that I like the most. But it's really been a while since I've kind of like intentionally like dug through or like intentionally try to watch like actual romance movies.
I'm trying to think about like any recent movies that were just purely romance these days. Like I feel like there's not too many.
Pretty rough.
Am I wrong in that, or
no? They're pretty sparing.
Yeah, I don't think they go into that as much anymore, right? Like
I think it's more safe for like now that like TV and streaming is a big thing. Like that's more of that kind of lane aspect, right? Where movies are more like taking kind of like a blockbuster-esque path. So you don't really see, because like like actual romance or like melodramatic romance, like a lot of that's kind of tied with drama per se. Yeah. And so it's very like sparingly that you kind of see like true dramas in that way, unless it's like, Oscar like season, stuff like that. But
I don't even think a lot of romance movies get Oscars too much.
No.
Right? It's not like Oscar bait. It's not really Oscar bait.
It's not a war film.
Yeah, it's not like like Schindler's List or something like that.
Right. But I mean, the reason why I say like
a biopic.
right, yeah. Like something that's like history, like importance. But I mean, why I say that it's kind of one of my like particular favorites is because I mean, naturally they're character driven films, right? Like you're naturally kind of like in the weeds with characters, and that's taking precedence in the story in the movie, and really that's kind of what I'm most attracted to and look forward to. So I think that watching romance is kind of like it's a buy-in into that, you know, and so that's kind of personally like that's into my interest. So that's why I particularly like it. But yeah, you know, I mean that doesn't mean that they're always good. We're about to find out, see some good ones. Have you seen your picks? Both of them, by the way. Do you even remember?
Yeah, the classic and A Moment to Remember. I think that's the English name of it.
Yeah. You seen both? Okay. I seen one that I picked.
Which one?
So yeah, classic Moment to Remember. I did A Man and a Woman, and then Love Letter.
Which one did you watch?
Man and a Woman. It's been a while. I remember it being good. I mean, not like excellent, but I mean, good watch.
Yeah.
Love Letter, I haven't seen, but Shinji Iwai, prominent drama kind of like romance filmmaker. This is like one of his early popular films, I believe. I think this is like, I don't want to say his breakout, but like close to that era. But I'm a fan of Iwai, so I want to see this one for a while, and I just never like got into it. So it's good. I like podcasting because it's forcing me to like watch movies that I've been like, you know, that's been on the list for a while. Like now I cannot deter.
I gotta say, for Koreans, romance movies are like
The blood.
Yeah, it's just like it is their like, you know, lifeblood in terms of like the kinds of movies that Korean people make.
Yeah.
There's two. It's gangster movie, gangster cop movies, and romance movies. Those are the two things that like Korean people love.
Yeah.
And the two that I picked, the classic and A Moment to Remember, might possibly be the most iconic of those Korean like movies.
Gotcha.
Romance movies. Like, and you know, it's the most like classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many Korean movies that are like, you know, romance.
Yeah.
It's just that like if you even watch like Korean dramas, you just know like
That's all.
That's
every single one.
And so like yeah, there's an art that the Korean people have mastered in terms of like, I'm gonna make you, you know, fall in love with these people and with these lives. Yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy it. You haven't watched those two, right?
No. So for the majority of the series, it'll be fresh take on it, which is exciting.
Yeah,
it's exciting again, I should say.
And it's for the two picks that I picked. Actually, the female protagonist, the main character, is the same person in both of the movies.
Oh, great.
She's kind of like
is she Miss Romance?
She kind of is. Yeah, she is the
is she
iconic, like you know.
That's like every dude is in love.
There's a thing called like National First Love in Korea. Like it's like a title that they put on these people who are like iconic like romance figures and she's like one of them. she was one of them during that time when she was like at her age at that time.
Yeah. Apex Mountain romance.
It's just kind of like like when you think about romance, you think about this person, right?
Talk about typecast when your own country like you are.
I mean, it's just more like a affectionate like title for that person, but because of, you know, how iconic like, you know, they were in these movies, but it just goes to show how like how much emphasis people like Korean people put in like these like romance movies.
This genre.
Just kind of like in that genre.
Yeah, that should be interesting. So how it would go is we'll do the classic first because it's a classic.
Yeah. Is that the oldest one?
Yes. 2003, and then A Moment to Remember, which came out a year later in 2004, and then we'll do A Man and a Woman, 2016, And no, it is not actually. I lied. Love Letter came out in 1995.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be the last, and that's the oldest by Shinji Iwai. Yeah. My bad. And that'll be the order of things. So it's just to see. Next week we'll kick it off, the classic. And before we go, just want to give a shout out to our Patreon page. Come and take a look, see some stuff. If you can't wait, maybe you'll get an episode earlier and you can brag to all your friends and family. Haha, you can't see the classic until after the fact. Other than that, if you want to see what's going on with us, Instagram and Twitter at Past Subtitles. And if you're watching us, you can like, subscribe, comment what you think. We'd love to some feedback as well.
We would love to see what you guys thought about the movie and your insights on
because if you like this movie, you can fight us about it.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, it's always good to see what other people think about the movies as well. So we would love to hear what your thoughts are on the movie. So give us a comment.
Please, because I'm tired of listening to this guy's opinion. I'm kidding. But yeah, we'll see you next week. Peace.
Bye.